Well, we want to invite District Attorney John Foote to the desk and look forward to his presentation this afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We have the packets, I think.
All right.
I do. No, I've got one. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Bernard and members of the committee and staff. My name's John Foote. I'm the district attorney here in the county, and I've been in office now. I'm in my 17th year. So it's nice to be back. I hear things are different this year, so I'm trying to figure out how they'd be different. You're asking a lot of questions, and which is good. I don't mind. That's good. But the more I can understand what it is you're interested in, the more I can come prepared to answer. So, so I'll go through the PowerPoint, if I remember how. So the only thing I'd say about our mission is that phrase about pursue justice. It sounds like justice is in more things now. People put it as a label, but it really does drive everything we do. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. We have three sections. We don't call them divisions, but for budgeting we do. And in essence, they're criminal prosecution, which is, you'll see the largest portion. And then we collect child support. It's been ordered by the court and not paid. And then we provide services to victims of crime. On our criminal prosecution section, the budget is 74% of our total budget is criminal prosecution. And of the criminal prosecution budget, 88% is general fund, simply put. So this section of our office is largely, pretty much exclusively funded by the county. And you can see that some of the results we've had. We've had this case manager system for since 2003, I think. And it's kind of a herky-jerky thing. We have problems with forced releases. I thought I put that on mute.
$5.
It's my children. You can find my children. They're supposed to call me. So we have problems with forced releases, and when people get forced release, they don't come to court. So that produces some bench warrants, and we struggle with that in our case manager system. But the result of all this is that we only set about 15 or 16% of our cases for trial, which means we don't subpoena law enforcement, they don't pay overtime. It's much better for victims and witnesses. So that's been a large success. It's remained pretty consistent for the last 14 years. We have a variety of early disposition programs, which I'd be glad to talk to you about if you'd like. Programs to help us sort of manage certain case populations of people that we prosecute. For those who don't know, we're on a conveyor belt. Our office is on a conveyor belt, which is public safety, criminal justice. And we receive things from law enforcement agencies, and we hand them to the courts. And then the courts hand them to community corrections or to prison. So we're a very important part of it because we're both a gateway. We're an ally and a supporter of public safety, but of law enforcement, but we also are a gateway. We're supposed to screen what they do. So we try and reach back and educate them on what we need and work with them, but we also have to say, no, that didn't work. So it's this interesting relationship. Law enforcement understands that we do. We're independent, but we're a partner. So it's a very, it's an important relationship to have both aspects, in my opinion. So our relationships with our other partners is very important to us. And the early disposition courts are a reflection of that. The biggest challenge we have is, right now, for me, we have lots of things going on. We have a lot of really difficult cases going on right now, which I'd be glad to talk to you about if you're interested. Some of them you know about. The Followers of Christ, the newest case. We're right in the middle of determining whether to charge that or how to charge it and who to charge. It's very difficult. We have other cases, some of which you read out in the paper, but in terms of what's going on, understanding what's going on in our community, which affects us, we don't have any crime data. And I brought this to the commissioners during the performance clackamas. There's been a lot of challenges with public safety in the region. You've probably heard about this from the region system that the metro area law enforcement agencies bought into about 4 or 5 years ago. And it's caused them to not report crime data to the Oregon State Police in 2015, I think 14, 15, and 16. If you go to the website, there's no crime data for the metro area police agencies. And then it doesn't get reported to the FBI. So we're flying blind for the agencies that are in region. That's the sheriff's office and some other local agencies, quite a few of them, I think. So we saw a bump in our caseload this past year, and not an insignificant one. And so we started asking questions in our office. What's going on? And that's when I found out we had no crime data. So, or very little. So we started working really hard to figure out what's going on with their intake. Now, intake is the cases we get from law enforcement. That's what we call it. And we had to kind of build the database or the data bank because we'd never really done it before. We'd relied on crime data. So I've provided you in our materials the change we saw in our intake last year. It's a 16.6% increase. And I wanted you to be able to see it. I wanted us to see, and I wanted you to be able to see how it broke out by agency and then how it broke out by crime type. So that's these materials here. And they're significant, and they're significant across agencies, but particularly on crime types. Person crimes is up 2.5%, and property crimes up 14%. So, and that's consistent with our case counts. So that's a challenge for us. And let me kind of put that in context for you. I've been working in public safety for 37 years, and I worked in public safety in the 80s as a prosecutor, a line prosecutor, when all we had was exploding case counts and we didn't really have any control over it. And in the last 25 years, 27 years, we worked really hard collectively to do something about crime with considerable success. Crime rates, this is the safest Oregon I've ever worked and lived in. We're proud of that. But one of the things that comes out of that is we don't have to ask you for resources more and more, which used to be like the 1980s. And one of the outcomes of growth in intake is we start stretching our ability to do the work. So the sooner we can see this and figure out, see it and understand it, I think we all have an interest in this. Because I lived through a time when we never had enough resources, police and our offices, to do the work. I had worked in an office, we had 250 cases per deputy, DA. It was crushing. We just couldn't get it all done. So I remember those. I'm old, but I remember those, and we cannot go back to that. So the sooner we can see changes and talk about it, in my opinion, the sooner we can maybe start to figure out what's going on. So that's why I did this. I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I'm just saying we don't have any crime data, so we see a big increase. Now, will it flatten off? I don't know. But that's our biggest challenge. And I've tried to engage our law enforcement partners now, but it had, with not, the reason I did the intake is I'm not having a lot of success, because they've got their own problems with technology they're dealing with, so that's that. Then I also gave you charts on recidivism, which is recidivism is a new arrest within 3 years. Well, a new arrest almost always results in a case coming to us. So that's up too. So whether they're the same thing or not, I don't know. So that's our biggest challenge. And if you want to talk about that and theories about why it happens, be glad to talk about it. But because a lot of it is theory. But anyway, wanted you to know that. That to me is, I'm not like, I don't think it's the house isn't on fire, but a 16% increase is significant. So I think we should be talking about it. So we have a fund balance that's significant. And anyone will tell you, we've had one for a long time. And it has to do with my approach to spending money, which is the more I can save, the less I have to ask you. Because when I worked in Salem in the middle of my career in a state office in the Department of Corrections, we couldn't keep our carryover. So I'll be honest with you, at the end of every fiscal year, there was a conversation about, is there anything we need? Because the money's gone. Okay? Well, I mean, we weren't reckless, but you're foolish if you don't have that conversation. If that's the structure you have. That isn't the structure we have now. I haven't had it since I've been here, which is the more we save, the less we might have to cut next year. And we've taken that approach from the very beginning. And it's become part of our way we do business. So that's why we have the carryover we do, and that's why we don't ask for more money, because that's the way we've operated. So you can see where we put it, but as some of you met our office administrator, Randy Pelham, she's behind me. We're glad to talk to her. She buys into this. She's been very aggressive about, well, she's done a lot of important things in our office in terms of the substructure, staff and technology, but she's used a lot of temporary employees because she's had to, because we've had turnover, because the performance wasn't as good. That takes a strong leadership to do that, so that's how it kind of shows up here. Any questions, I'd be glad to ask them. Family support is 14% of our budget, and it's only 22% of the general fund supported. It's 71% federal and 7% state. We're heavily subsidized, and we collect child support, and we've had a lot of success with it. We've had some turnover and change, both in lawyers and staff. We're dealing with we are very connected. DES, which is the state office that collects child support out of the Department of Justice. There have been some bumps in the road with some of that, and but we're hanging in there, and we're doing a good job. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you have about that. And then finally, victim assistance is 11% of our overall fund, and it's only 36% general fund supported. We've become fairly heavy in grant support. One of the things that's happened that will show up here that's not really a change in any budget is the funding. We receive money for the multidisciplinary team, MDT. We receive it from the state, which we have. We're the place it comes, and then we distribute it through the MDT to partners. Children's Center gets a lot of it, but we move that money. It's over $300,000 from our criminal prosecution office to victim assistance. So it made a big bubble in victim assistance, but it's pass-through money. We don't get it. It goes on to partners. And on victim assistance, significant issues I just wanted to tell you on the, we have a volunteer program with victim assistance, and last year they had 13,610 hours of volunteer time, which is equivalent to almost 7 FTE, so it's a good thing. So our overall budget, it's up 1.4%. Our general fund is up a little over 3%. Personnel is it's just slightly up. Materials and services are up 2.1%, and allocated costs, which is the greatest increase we've seen, is up 4.7%. We had a PLP, and I've only had one too, so I always forget what it means, but we had one, we did.
Please.
Yes, but before that, capital, the county was very generous and remodeled a building for us and got us out of some particularly bad buildings, but, and we appreciate that. So that was last year. And these are our trends. I've already talked about them a little bit. We're stable on employees. And there's our PLP, which is up at Family Justice Center. And we continue to monitor. I keep asking questions, okay, what are we getting out of it? And I think it's too early to say, but the lawyers have begun to believe in it, mostly because they have a lot more contact with victims right off the bat and a lot more contact with the investigators, which does help our cases. So, having said that, now I'll get my glasses out for questions. Thank you.
All right. Well, we will start with Commission Chair Bernard.
Some of your department is funded by the state.
Yes.
And who is funded by the state?
Well, it's mostly family support, but it's also victim assistance. Those are the two areas that get the most.
But staff too, the district?
Well, yes, victim assistance is grants.
Uh-huh.
We've staffed certain positions. And family support, it's not staff-driven. It's a percentage of our budget, but it does fund staff, yes.
But your district attorneys, your assistant district attorneys are all funded by the state, right?
No,
No. You
almost
are.
all. I get a little bit of my salary,
A portion of your
but
salary.
I think almost 90% of that section, criminal prosecution, is funded by the county.
Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to remember
Yes.
what
yes.
it was. I notice, we've had this discussion about recidivism, but if you just actually compare the charts, they kind of go like this. They sort of follow one another. So I don't get why it makes a difference. You're either counting one or not the other. It still kind of looks the same as you look across the chart.
That's actually a good thing. You're talking about convictions, Commissioner,
Conviction versus
and arrests?
Arrests. But I'm just saying that if the chart, if the definition is the issue, the definition adds a arrest, but it still follows one another, so it may read lower if you don't include arrests. It may read higher if you do include arrests, but there's still the pattern is basically the same. So I don't know why it's even an issue.
It's an issue to me, Commissioner, because I think arrests represent crime.
Yeah, but
And crime
still,
is what we care about.
yeah, but if you're counting crime, it's still the same pattern.
There's trends, and then there's the actual numbers. And trends are, yes, and I'd say what bothers me about the trend is look at what's happened since evidence-based practices was implemented. And we put it on the chart. And things are not any better. I think that's worth talking about. Nobody wants to talk about it, but I think we should talk about it. I don't suggesting we do it today, but that's the reason for the trend that matters to me. Up and down, it can change, but the numbers themselves, and I think I talked about this when we talked about performance clackamas, the reason I think arrest is so important is if our number one priority is crime, the closest measurement to crime we have is arrest, not convictions. The lower we go, the more crime we miss, if our crime is our measurement, which I think it has to be our ultimate concern. So I'm okay with counting convictions because we don't convict everyone who gets arrested, and there are lots of reasons for that, which we can talk about. But I think you want us to be discerning. But that doesn't mean it's not, arrests are the best measurement if crime is what you care about. So
Yeah, but crime in general is down a lot from what it was in the past. It is climbing now.
it's starting to climb. Yes,
Yeah,
it
it's
is.
starting to climb. So an increase of a certain percentage you know, is a bad thing, obviously.
Right.
But we're coming from a lower level than we were in the past. So we
Yes.
did something right, but there are things that are occurring that are causing increase in crime. I think marijuana is probably one of those. And I also think that prescription drugs are another one that are causing those things, and frankly, attitudes in a lot of ways.
Commissioner, I would agree. I think I have my thoughts about it, and the truth is, we'll know more over time, because time, you get a better sense of things. But one thing that concerns me is there is a massive push in Salem for more serious offenders who are in prison to not be in prison anymore and be in the community. And I think there is an effect from that. I get shot in Salem if I said that, because you're not allowed to talk that way. But that's what concerns me. And, you know, the people who pay the price for that are the people who live in the community and victims. And they do not have a voice in Salem right now. And we'll see. I mean, I've tried to say what my concerns are, and but I don't work down there. So, but I think it's my job to raise it with you and to keep you in the loop. I'm not asking you to do anything, but I'm concerned about it, because I think the reason why we dropped crime is we struck the right balance between the kinds of punishment we did, and it caused prisons to grow, but they were so badly shrunken before we had no consequences. And, you know, in this county last year, 23% of convicted felons went to prison. And so that's, you know, and it was consistently around that number before. So we weren't throwing everybody in prison, but we were putting more people in prison. And when you incarcerate serious offenders, you do reduce crime.
Of course,
I'm sorry.
if we didn't use our prisons and jails as mental health facilities, it'd be a different world out there. Unlike other countries that actually separate the two, it's important. But you know, when Milwaukee had a home for the criminally insane, I fought that thing. We bought the land out from under them, the city manager and myself, and then we were told to sell it back at the price we paid for it, or we would be seeing you in court. I learned a lot since then. I mean, I've had dinner there now. So the sad part is we're using our prisons and jails to hold people who should be in mental institutions or in some other form of mental health facility. And we have more people in prison and jail in the United States than the world, anywhere else in the world. And that's a sad story.
See, Commissioner, I would respectfully see it differently. I think if you take, and I'll stand by this, you take any criminal in Oregon prisons with their history or their crime, and you put them in any other country in the world, the best that's going to happen to them is they're going to be in a jail. That is the best. And the fact that we incarcerate more, I believe, is a reflection of we have two things more than anyone else has ever had in history: wealth and freedom. And what happens when you give a group of people a lot of money and a lot of freedom? You get a lot of dumb behavior. So that's America. We're a big chaotic thing. And what I wish is we were consistent about our approach to punishment and public safety. And now we flip-flop. We've just made Oregon the safest I've ever lived in it, and they're about to disinvest in it. And what? Why are we stopping? So, but it's on this other ideology that's, you know, that's what's going to happen is they're going to de-incarcerate, crime's going to pop, and we're going to get a ballot measure. And then the people in Salem are going to blame the voters. And I keep telling them, you get ballot measures because you don't listen. There's a middle ground. That's what 57 was a middle ground, no mandatory minimums. They're about to try and repeal it. So I went down and testified, and you know what happened. So I got threatened, or the county got threatened. So, you know, it's just, they don't listen. And they put ideology over practicality. So it's a frustration of mine. You know, being independently elected, I can speak. but, you know, I think you just have to say it the way you see it. And I've been around for a long time, so I've seen a lot of different stuff. So I agree with you about the mentally ill. We can't commit anybody anymore. We can't intervene before they commit a crime. We have to wait for them to commit a crime before we do something. And nobody intended for that to happen, but that's what's happened. So, anyway, we're way off the budget, but thank you for.
So did I.
I love
Okay.
talking about this
His
stuff.
budget, by
but,
the way.
Well, the parks bring us back to budget talk.
Yes.
Yeah, with just a very simple, quick question for my own curiosity. Is there anything in your budget, I mean, especially, I gotta make sure my light's on, especially like maybe in the Victims Assistance Fund or something, or department, that's provided to the Children's Center of Clackamas County or to similar agencies like Clackamas Women's Services, you know, that type of thing? Parrot Creek probably doesn't fall under that, or Madonna
Right,
Center, but a couple of others. I just wondered.
Ms. Parks, I'd love to answer that question. Yes, we provide revenue to the Children's Center, and you know my connection to there from the beginning. There's an argument, Barry Rotrock, the former superintendent in Oregon City, used to tell me when he was on the board, this should be run by the government, shouldn't be done by nonprofit. And and he said that because it's such an integral part of our whole effort to figure out what's happened to a child and what should happen next. And so we need it, almost more than anything else I can think of. And so you know, they were trying to put their budget together in the beginning. I said, I think I can find some money in my budget and help. And I'm doing it again this year. And so that's why we've done it, and it's just that connection because it's so close to what we do. These other organizations have different relationships, and, you know, I was on the Parrot Creek board for over 10 years. They got different
Yeah, it's
challenges.
different, right,
Yeah,
yeah.
and they work in a facility provided by the county. So it's a different thing with each one, but the Children's Center just happened to be in that place at that time. We developed this source of revenue for them. I want to make sure we provide it.
Yeah, it seems like one of those pathways that you have to work through and with, you know, constantly, you and law enforcement both. I mean, Children's Center performs such great services. Unfortunately, that we need them.
Yes. It's such a powerful thing, if I could, it's very important that we support it, but it's also very important that we let them do their job and not feel like they need to do something for us.
True.
So, because that just ruins the whole thing. We want to know what really happened.
Yeah,
And so that's the relationship we've tried to have with them.
yeah. Okay, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Just curious.
Commissioner Savas.
John, just to touch on our conversation we had just a little bit ago with regard to percentages versus numbers. Thank
Yeah.
you for showing some numbers here along with the percentages. I think what we get lost in, and just no reflection on your department because you're doing a pretty good job of your report here, but I've heard through the last couple of days here some of the members here who recognize that there's sometimes the percentage is less important than sometimes the number, or you need both actually to make a fair evaluation. In this sense, it would be nice to know, I don't know if you've already done that, but just when we talk about the capacity of your department or the capacity physically of the structure, the courthouse itself or others, your staffing, all those things, your infrastructure basically, what these numbers look like over a 10-year period. Not necessarily in percentage so much as in numbers. For example, if 10 years ago you were seeing, just take the top one here from the sheriff's office, you were seeing 4,200. I'm sure that's a higher number than it was 10 years ago, I presume. But if it was flat, it'd be a harder case to make that you need anything, right? Because you can handle it, you're not seeing a bigger caseload, potentially. No one case is the same as another case, as I recognize that. But I just want to say, acknowledge that. I'd love to see some numbers, not necessary for my budget today,
Right.
Obviously, but it'd be great to see what maybe over 5 or 10 years that looks like.
Commissioner Salvis, we can do that in a big number because on the first page of our budget documents is our summary, and it has the total number of cases we got, which is I think 9,200 or something this year. And you can go back every year I've been here, and that number is in our summary. So you can go back and just track them out. And I remember when it was in the 5,000s. So since I've been here, so it's grown. So that's all I'd say. Yeah.
Thank you. Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You mentioned performance clackamas a couple times, and I'm just wondering, do you plan on your office going through that process?
Waiting for this question. Because I knew I was going to get it.
All right, you got it.
And if I can just give a little background.
Go ahead.
So the fellow who owns, what's the name of the fellow who owns the company? Who came out and spoke? Yeah, yeah. Is he own it? Is he the owner? He came out and spoke to a lot of department heads and elected officials, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, Don, was it? Maybe longer?
3.
Okay. And I listened to him and I thought, and I asked him, have any DAs done this? Because we're kind of, and I'll explain why. And he said, yeah, he'd done it. And I said, well, I need to see what they did. Because I really like what you're saying, so that was one conversation. And then, I told Dan a few years ago, I need to know more, so, before we can make a decision. So, he was busy doing other departments, but eventually, I said, we need to hear from Marv. I want Marv to talk to our senior people, the managers, the senior deputies, the chief deputy, Brandy, the head of victim assistance, and I want them to talk to him. And the reason I'll tell you this is our folks are busy every day in court, every day. They don't have time to go to meetings. I always tell them, I go to meetings so you don't have to. So that's the nature of what we do. It's really hard for them to find time to go off-site for days. So, especially a whole group of them. So anyway, we met, and he had a PowerPoint, I still remember this, and he didn't even use it. He just ended sitting down, we had a conversation about what is it we'd have to do and what would it bring us? And everybody went, wow, that'd be a lot. And I don't know, maybe. And we really liked him. I like his values. I like what he says. I believe in it. I think we try and run our office that way. The way he talks, we try and run it that way. And I hope you can see that. So I'm always trying to weigh, what is it that we will get, and what is it we're going to have to do if we do this? Because what's the trade-off? And I go and talk to Bob Roman, and I go talk to, how's it been for you? And Bob will tell me what he thinks. As you know, I love Bob. So, and Bob actually believes in the principles too, but he's struggling with the workload and staff that's required to do it. So I listened to that, and so that's kind of where we are. I believe in what Performance Clackamas is about. I believe in the values that it does. I struggle with the value, the increased value for us versus what appears to be a lot of work, and over an extended period of time with our folks who are already busy. So that would be my answer. So I'm open to listening because I think it's the right principles. I just have to watch out for the office in terms of getting the work done.
All right, so I would encourage you to keep that communication going with Mr. Krupp and Ms. Buttman and the consultant. We did get the sheriff yesterday to commit to doing it, so you've
I'll
got
tell you
an
what,
example there.
if I was to say it, I'm not the one going to be doing it.
Right.
It's all the people who work for me, and I don't want to do that unless I understand what it is I'm asking
We'll
them
tell
to
you,
do.
I'm new on the committee this year, but I've heard from many department heads who have appeared before us in the last 3 days who've gone through it, saying it was a very valuable experience. So I'm just impressed that they offered that
Yeah.
up. It wasn't something
I've
we
heard that
asked
too.
them, but.
And
anyway.
I don't know their cultures. I mean, I know our culture.
Sure.
So that's why I've tried to have them bring in and talk to them. And they're all kind of, I don't know. God, that's a lot of work. And we do a lot of that already. So, and we think that way.
So that's a possible maybe.
What's that?
A possible maybe.
I would say we're always open to being better. We want to be better. But I don't want to get distracted down a tunnel that it's going to eventually pull us away from what we should be doing. So
It's more about how you manage the process.
I don't know how to say that any more than that. I listen to Marv, I think, God, Marv, why don't you just come work with us? But don't make us leave the job. And I know that's not practical. So I don't know. I just don't know. I'm willing to keep talking, keep listening. But that's, Don, you've heard me say all this before, so you know.
All right.
Hope that's helpful.
Ed, you're next with questions. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about region? I had a couple questions here, and there's a lot of people here that don't know what that is,
Come on
and
up, Randy.
how it works. And it sounds like it may be an overtime issue, and we're talking about overtime at the sheriff's office, so.
I am not a technology person, Mr. Mayor, and so I'm not. But I'm enough, I know it can be useful. And so I try and be supportive of the people who are trying to tell me what's. So Brandy Pelham, our office administrator, has been involved. We have a case manager system called PBK, which we got a few years ago, which is pretty cheap and automated us. And we've always been trying to get it to do more for us. And we were going to link with Region. And because we want to, you know, we're on a conveyor belt of information. So the more we can automate it to fill our fields, right? I mean, it seemed to me like a no-brainer for a long time ago. I used to do carbon back in the 80s. Carbon copies, you know, where I'd write it on it and then tear it all up. So I know it, and then I'd write the address where it happened 10 times on a case. I memorized them all because I wrote it so much. So I know it's repetitive information. So I've always thought we ought to be automated. We ought to get it electronically, ought to fill our fields, and we ought to fill the fields for the court. And Ms. Pelham, who came from private practice, she absolutely believes that too. So that's our goal. But now we've got Region, what we thought we could try and do it with. We're not sure it's going to be here anymore. But that's still our goal. So I'll stop. You can ask Ms. Pelham anything you'd like about Region, because I don't really know.
So go ahead, talk about region. And
So our office's experience with Region has been interesting. There is a lot of, most of the county is receiving the law enforcement agencies in the county are using Region, all of them except for OSP, I believe. So most of our,
region is a report writing program, correct?
it is.
Okay.
So it's sort of like a full kind of service program. It has evidence and report writing and all of that in one system. So basically, we log into the sheriff's system under our login, which is Region, to get the reports out of there that are referred to our office for prosecution. So we have a full-time staff member, actually 2 full-time staff members that are dedicated to just pulling those reports and entering them into our system. A lot of times, the reports, either they don't come to us because they get somehow lost in the system in between, you know, the sergeant approving it and then it getting to us. And then also, if it's in custody and it has to be done right away, sometimes we don't get the report in time to get it sent up to court and by their deadline. So there's a lot of problems that we've had with Region and having the information coming from the sheriff's office or the law enforcement agency's office to our office. So it's just been kind of a nightmare. So what we did notice is that because, like Mr. Foote said, their law enforcement agencies are entering the information and their records department is making sure all of the, the evidence that they have is attached to it that's digital. We can have that come over to our PBK system, which is our case management system, and integrate the information sharing and the document sharing, which would be pictures, video, anything like that. So we were working towards that, and then the sheriff's office has decided to not use Region. And so we are going to be looking at another way of integrating the information or the system so that we can share information no matter what kind of system or what system the law enforcement agencies decide to use, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add the sheriff's office requires deputies to write, especially custody reports, before they have to write them before they leave. So if they have to work overtime, and overtime's an issue, and the report writing system, from what I've been told, is almost impossible to get through. A towed vehicle takes like 45 minutes or an hour, where it took 15 minutes before to write the report. And so that's probably one reason the sheriff's office is getting rid of it. I didn't know that they were, but I know Clark County bought into it and they got rid of it, or in the process of.
If I could, Mr. Mura, the nice thing about, the thing that attracted them all to Region was it was all one system for all the agencies, and the idea we could get data better, and we could share, you know, the knuckleheads move around, so we wouldn't have to worry about jurisdiction anymore. We could just, and it's a great idea, and man, it's overdue. It's overdue everywhere, but in all of our systems. But the execution, I think, I have certain pet peeves, like buying big technology. I think it just never works. You better buy it small bites, that's just me. And then also, big vendors. You get lost. And Reason's big. It's out of California, and they just weren't responsive to the people here who complained about it. And we bought PBK, which was not a big company, and we were one of the first in Oregon, and they've been very service-oriented towards us from the beginning, and it was not expensive, and I feel like if I buy a piece of technology and it doesn't work, I want to be able to get out without losing my shorts. So that's why I don't like big purchases, because then you're stuck with something and you stay with it too long. And I'm not techno, I don't know, and they're always selling you stuff. I mean, they're business people, but so I'm a sucker. I got it on my forehead, so I don't want to buy anything unless I can see a way out if it doesn't work. And my staff all know this about me. So, and luckily we're not very big, so we could do that. But buying big vendors, I've always felt is kind of dicey. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it doesn't work out. But anyway, so now we're going to have some agencies with Region. I think Lake Oswego is going to stay with Region because they like it. And I think Washington County is going to stay in Region. I don't know what PPB is doing. They're staying for now. So we're going to have a broken up system again. So we just want to hook our PBK to whatever our agency is using. So.
Commissioner Salas.
Just real quick, I just wanted to Tom's question about, whether or not you get into MFR. I just want to echo what he said, but just expand on it briefly. What we heard from folks today saying is that they were surprised that they had a positive experience with it. And it goes back to that simple phrase, you don't know what you don't know. And so I think that they didn't know what they didn't know until they realized it. So with that said, I know, and I've witnessed here, and maybe the administrator could give you some comfort at another date about we've actually helped, from a staffing standpoint, helped some of the departments get through that because they didn't have the staffing either to help you along. So I think if that would help incentivize looking at it, I think it would help. And maybe we learn nothing. Maybe you're right. But from what we've heard, I think it was very, very refreshing to hear that people saying that we didn't realize. And overall, I think we're looking at, because I'm kind of pushed a strategic plan. I never envisioned it would be this MFR or be this particular vendor. And, I think the jury is kind of out, if you will, as to how do we monetize the benefit? Maybe that's going to take 5 or 6, we were talking about at lunchtime, about 5 or 6 years from now to figure out how that actually monetized out. But I think we can already see some different thinking as a result of that and some unforeseen benefits that perhaps could help your internal operations, which you may or may not be able to monetize.
Okay, I'll take your word for it, Commissioner Sullivan. I still think we should be talking to a DA's office with Marv that did it, so we can ask the questions of them. How did you do this? Because we need to see that it's been done, and actually the people who did it actually think it's worth something. And it can't be a little office.
I would do the same thing.
And Marv knows that, and so far we haven't. But in all fairness, you've been busy with other people, so it hasn't really come up. But that's kind of where it's been. So we haven't said no, but we haven't said yes.
Sounds like a yes.
It's more of a yes than a yes.
This is cross-examination, so you can lead me.
Leading, okay.
He's a lawyer.
Eric, you have a question or a comment?
I just wanted to comment on the handouts that you gave us here. This office memorandum on domestic violence unit statistics, very interesting, and it ties right into performance clackamas, one of the goals. And so I'm thinking maybe your office might be the point of the spear, if you will, as an indication of whether or not this county is going to achieve its performance clackamas goals in the area of public safety. the sheriff he's the beginning stage, but you're the one that actually prosecutes the cases and puts these guys behind bars. And so I really like what you provided, big time, so.
Thank you,
keep
Mr.
that.
Hofeld. I will tell you, those are collected by hand.
Yeah,
We've been doing this, when we started specializing in DV, when I came here, I said, I want stats. And so they started counting them by hand, and the form has not changed. And I also think it's really interesting because it gives you nuances and lots of different information, which is very important to understand. You know, you got all the cases coming in, what happens? And, you know, I was very concerned in the beginning about how many we charge, what percentage. Because when I came to the office in 1995, 3% of domestic violence cases were prosecuted. It was 3 or 6%. There were lots of reasons for that, but I was like, whoa. So I started asking around other counties when I came back, and it was 50 to 60%. So in my head, I was thinking, where are we, where are we, where are we? And so that's on there, and we've always been above that. So, but then there's lots of other things in there too. Are we trying out of cases? Are we, because, you know, the thing about trying cases, it means you're not walking away because you're afraid, which is an important part of your deputies doing their job. Don't be afraid to lose. We tell them that, if it's the right case, don't be afraid to lose. And you can lose domestic violence cases because your victims and witnesses change their minds. So, so trial rates are important, and that's been a struggle, actually. But, yeah, we use that. We talk about it after we get it every year. So,
well, I think it's going to become even more important, not just in domestic violence, but also in other areas of crime. If the state legislature adopts their policy of releasing these criminals out into the community again, and I follow you exactly. If you release them out of the community, out of jail, they're going to end up in our jails. And so to go back to the legislature and say, look, this program is failing in Clackamas County, we're going to need those kinds of statistics to be able to show them that's what's happening.
thank you. I will tell you, having been around, I find that you get they say certain statistics are important, so you go look at them, and then they don't turn out to be favorable. Guess what? They never come up again.
Yeah.
Prison forecasting, recidivism, crime rates. They're not mentioned in Salem.
Well, thank you for your testimony on Salem.
Thank you.
The voice of reason.
Well, not, I'm banished from Salem. Thank you very much.
One more question from Commissioner Humberson.
Oh,
Going back to the very beginning, my original question was why, thank you, was why no crime data reporting, and it's somewhat been addressed with this system. So I think you were absolutely right on when you commented that you are in a responsive or reactionary position because it comes to you and you have to pass it along. And to be able to prepare as quickly as possible for changes in what's going on the streets, you need data. So if this system isn't working, and this is not on you, so don't take it that way, it seems to me that, I don't know if you do a task force or whatever, but we need to find a system that does work, that works for the deputy on the street in terms of filing that report quickly and efficiently instead of an hour. It ought to be able to be done in 15 minutes. And you should be able to have the data that you need so you can adjust what you're going to need to do in your offices. So, you know, if in the future you come forward with some sort of a technological answer to that or a plan or whatever, I'd be interested in knowing what that would be, because I don't see how you can, the longer it takes for you to get information, the bigger the change has to be to react. So I'd rather do that in little increments than big giant increments. So,
all I can say is amen. Thank you. Thank you.
other philosophical things.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Our budget's in good shape.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much.
Here's like to a sheriff.